And amazingly, we found out that Congress had just chopped all of the funding off for the Vietnamese. They were down to firing just a very minimal amount of ammo. The General Vien told me they were flying something like about 25% of their sorties because they had no aviation gas. And suddenly our ally, who we had fought with, led with, supported, and trained, was suddenly almost defenseless. So kind of pull that up on your radar screen and think what might happen in Iraq. We've been appropriating about 40-some-odd billion dollars in multiple appropriations. I think every one of you ought to be in contact with your congressman and tell him not to pull the plug on Iraq. Because if that money isn't there to support the Army, the Marine Corps, or the Air Force, we're going to have another Vietnam on our hands. After all the marvelous work that these young kids have been doing, we listened to 4 of them yesterday, and they make your heart just beat a mile a minute because they're exactly as Dr. Sorley described them. They are our follow-on generation, and their war is absolutely as good as the Vietnam War or the Korean War or the World War II. We cannot shirk our responsibility to make certain that these kids get the appropriate funding and that we have the country behind them all of the time, all of the way, in every way.
Could we take a few questions from the floor? You have some over to the right, I believe.
If you knew that you were going to be POWs beforehand in Vietnam, would you still have served?
Interesting question.
Could you say it again?
Yes. I think the question was, if you knew beforehand, would you have gone? I think, as was alluded to earlier, we all volunteered to go. And one of the things I like to remind people is I had to fight to get into flying. I had to fight to get into fighters, and I had to beg to go to combat. And being over 21, knowing what the possibilities are, I would not shirk from that. So if I had to do all over again, knowing what I knew now, I would do it exactly the same.
Look who's friends, what kind of friends I have. You're damn right I'd do it again.
He likes convicted felons. Yeah, you know, I think any one of us would tell you we were lying if we said, yeah, I'm anxious to go. But when you look at all the good things that came out of it, you know, for us personally, I mean, the things we don't take for granted, the bond that we have, I mean, you can't buy that. You can't teach that. You can't share that in any other way than just to live it. And so if you don't look at the glass as being half empty for spending 6 years of your life in the pokey, and you look at what happened as a result of it, I think any one of us would say, okay, the glass might have been empty by that experience or drawn down, but we're much richer for it. I mean, look at the Doolittle Raider guys. I mean, they volunteered to go do something, you know, with probably a greater understanding of the fear that they might not come back than we did. I mean, we were Golden Knights. I mean, we were fighter pilots, you know, nothing's going to hurt us. But those guys went into it knowing that they were, you know, walking on a short plank, and they did it anyhow. And the way those gentlemen conducted themselves this morning, the camaraderie they share, if you've ever been to one of their reunions, I mean, wow, sometimes you got to take a step back to go 1,000 miles forward.
Yes, sir.
My name is Gordon Sims. I'm retired Navy World War II. And no one is, we see evidence of our, many of our politicians losing courage and getting in step with the popular anti-war. But no one has mentioned the influence of our major media that has certainly had a great effect of this recent election, I would say especially in Virginia. I'm from Virginia. But I would say I'd like to hear from Doctor here and others, how do they feel about the treatment by our media, major media?
So the way I understand the question is you're interested in hearing from them about the impact of media on specifically their experience, or you would like them to comment about
With the support and
current issues?
the support and the possibility of cutting off funding. So to me, the media has had a tremendous impact of the attitudes of the American people and of the politicians. And to me, it has not been the proper influence. I'd like to hear other opinions.
Gentlemen?
I listen to Fox.
Ed?
I don't think there's any question, but if the media would go more than 25 miles from the green zone, that they would see all the good things that are going on. But the way that's again the way this country works. I mean, you can agree with him, you can disagree with him, you can tune into Fox like Jack and I do, and ignore the other people who are too biased in our mind. Perhaps we're biased, but I don't think, as you say, the media is very objective in reporting what's really going on. But that doesn't sell newspapers. That doesn't sell TV time. The fact that we've got a bunch of GIs and a Army National Guard outfit from Arkansas is out building a school, 100 miles away from Iraq. Well, it's hard to get there. You got to go through the fringes of the green zone. You got to go through all the possible bad things that can happen. So who wants to go out and watch GIs from Arkansas build a school in Iraq? It's not news. I can honestly tell you from the missions I flew, flying guys back from Iraq. We picked them up at Landstuhl, Germany. The missions I was allowed to fly back to the States. These kids all want to go. But the other good news is about half of the casualties are not war-related. These are guys smashing their thumb with a hammer while they're building a school. These are guys dropping a crankshaft on themselves while they're trying to help somebody put a car back together, falling through a roof, or some of the funny ones were guys running around at night playing tag with those little goggles that get down in front of the head. So, a lot of the injuries come from things like that. Those are the good news. Those are the funny things that, again, you're right. The media really doesn't paint a balanced picture. And not to get too political here, but, one of the great revelations to me in this war was some guy named Geraldo Rivera, who 10 years ago was so anti-military, it seemed. I couldn't stand him. And now he's one of our biggest boomers. And he's one of the few guys that actually goes over and does a lot of the good news stuff, which I rather enjoy seeing on Fox.
The Vietnamese had a media room where they would drag the POWs room, not a group, just room at a time. And they would be pictures of the anti-war movement, which they would describe as 3 million people marching down streets in San Francisco who had a sign that said, "We are against the war, we are against 6 other things, and the Colts." Now there's a hell of an anti-war statement. We're against the Baltimore Colts. So the first time we went in there, we saw something that we'd never seen before. I've been in there 3 years, was the wet T-shirt look on a very ample female gendered lady. She had a sign over her head that said, "Make love, not war."